Question 1. Operational review demonstrates that the IBM SmartCloud Control Desk V7.5 One IT asset management implementation is experiencing a growing number of discrepancies between discovered assets and assets recorded in the system, particularly concerning software licenses and hardware configurations. The IT asset manager is tasked with proposing a strategy to address these discrepancies. Which of the following approaches best aligns with maintaining regulatory compliance and operational integrity? Option A. Implement a comprehensive reconciliation process that involves automated discovery tool data validation against SCCD records, followed by a defined workflow for investigating and resolving discrepancies with clear ownership and documentation, prioritizing critical assets and licenses. Option B. Accept all discrepancies as a normal part of IT operations and focus resources on other IT management priorities, as long as the core functionality of discovered assets is not immediately impacted. Option C. Rely solely on the automated discovery tools to update SCCD records, assuming that any discrepancies are minor and will self-correct over time, without manual intervention or investigation. Option D. Conduct manual reconciliation on an ad hoc basis, only when a specific audit or compliance request arises, focusing on the immediate need rather than systemic data integrity. The correct answer is A. Implement a comprehensive reconciliation process that involves automated discovery tool data validation against SCCD records, followed by a defined workflow for investigating and resolving discrepancies with clear ownership and documentation, prioritizing critical assets and licenses. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge in balancing the need for accurate IT asset inventory with the practical constraints of a rapidly evolving IT environment. The core difficulty lies in ensuring that the IBM Smart Cloud Control Desk SCCD V7.5 One IT asset management implementation remains a reliable source of truth for asset data, even when faced with dynamic changes and potential data discrepancies. Careful judgment is required to select an approach that is both compliant with regulatory frameworks and effective in maintaining data integrity. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a systematic and documented process for reconciling discrepancies. This aligns with the principles of good governance and auditability, which are often mandated by regulatory frameworks governing IT asset management. By establishing clear ownership, defining reconciliation procedures, and ensuring timely resolution, organizations can maintain the accuracy and completeness of their asset data. This proactive approach minimizes the risk of non-compliance, financial misstatements, and operational inefficiencies that can arise from inaccurate asset records. It also demonstrates a commitment to data quality, which is crucial for effective decision-making, security posture management, and cost optimization. An incorrect approach that relies solely on automated reconciliation, without human oversight, fails to address the nuances of data discrepancies. This can lead to the incorrect deactivation or misclassification of assets, potentially violating regulatory requirements related to asset tracking and lifecycle management. Furthermore, it bypasses the critical step of investigating the root cause of discrepancies, which is essential for preventing future issues and maintaining data integrity. Another incorrect approach that involves manual, ad hoc reconciliation without a defined process is also professionally unacceptable. This method is prone to errors, inconsistencies, and a lack of auditability. It does not provide a reliable mechanism for tracking resolutions or demonstrating compliance with internal policies or external regulations. The absence of a structured process makes it difficult to identify trends in discrepancies or to implement systemic improvements. A further incorrect approach that prioritizes speed over accuracy by accepting discrepancies without thorough investigation is ethically and regulatorily unsound. This can lead to significant financial risks, such as overspending on licenses for assets that are no longer in use or underestimating the true cost of IT infrastructure. It also compromises the organization's security posture by obscuring the actual deployed assets, making it harder to identify and mitigate vulnerabilities. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a thorough understanding of the organization's regulatory obligations, the capabilities of the IT asset management system, SCCD V7.5 in this case, and the specific nature of the data discrepancies. It requires a risk-based approach, prioritizing the resolution of discrepancies that have the greatest potential impact on compliance, security, and financial reporting. Establishing clear roles and responsibilities, defining standardized reconciliation procedures, and implementing a robust change management process are crucial steps in ensuring the ongoing integrity of IT asset data. Regular audits and reviews of the reconciliation process should also be conducted to ensure its effectiveness and adherence to best practices. Question 2. Which approach would be most effective and compliant for reconciling physical IT assets with their recorded inventory within IBM SmartCloud Control Desk V7? 5. 1. Considering resource constraints and operational impact. Option A. Perform ad hoc physical checks of assets only when specific issues or user complaints arise, without a structured reconciliation process. Option B. Implement a phased reconciliation strategy that prioritizes assets based on criticality, value, and recent changes, utilizing SCCD discovery tools and targeted physical audits. Option C. Conduct a comprehensive, organization-wide physical audit of all IT assets on a fixed annual schedule, regardless of their criticality or recent activity. Option D. Rely exclusively on automated network discovery tools to update the SCCD inventory, assuming all assets are discoverable and accurately reported. Correct answer is B. Implement a phased reconciliation strategy that prioritizes assets based on criticality, value, and recent changes, utilizing SCCD discovery tools and targeted physical audits. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge in IT asset management, balancing the need for accurate and up-to-date asset data with the practical constraints of resource allocation and potential disruption to ongoing IT operations. The IBM Smart Cloud Control Desk, SCCD V7. 5. 1. IT asset management implementation exam focuses on practical application within a defined regulatory and operational context. For this exam, we assume a U.S. regulatory framework, specifically focusing on principles that underpin IT asset management best practices and compliance, such as those influenced by Sarbanes-Oxley, SOX, for financial reporting accuracy, and NIST guidelines for cybersecurity and data integrity. The professionally challenging aspect lies in determining the most effective and compliant method for reconciling physical IT assets with their recorded inventory within SCCD. This requires a nuanced understanding of the trade-offs between thoroughness, cost, time, and the risk of data inaccuracies impacting financial audits, security posture, and operational efficiency. A failure to maintain accurate asset records can lead to compliance violations, increased security vulnerabilities, and inefficient resource utilization. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a systematic, risk-based methodology that leverages SCCD capabilities for efficient reconciliation. By focusing on high-value, high-risk, or recently changed assets first, it ensures that the most critical data is validated promptly, minimizing exposure to compliance and security risks. This approach aligns with the principles of effective IT governance and risk management, ensuring that audit trails are maintained and that financial reporting is based on reliable asset data, as implicitly required by regulations like SOX. It also demonstrates a proactive stance in managing the asset lifecycle, a core tenet of IT asset management. An incorrect approach that relies solely on manual, ad hoc checks without a defined methodology is professionally unacceptable. This would likely lead to inconsistent data, missed assets, and an inability to provide reliable audit evidence, potentially violating SOX requirements for accurate financial reporting. It also represents a failure to leverage the capabilities of SCCD for efficient and effective asset management. Another incorrect approach that involves a complete, unprioritized physical audit of every single asset without regard to criticality or change history is inefficient and costly, diverting resources from more pressing tasks and potentially causing unnecessary disruption. While thorough, its lack of strategic prioritization makes it professionally suboptimal and potentially wasteful. Third incorrect approach that relies solely on automated discovery tools without physical verification fails to account for assets that may be offline, unmanaged, or have discrepancies not detectable by network scans, leading to incomplete and inaccurate inventory data, which is a significant compliance and security risk. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with understanding the organization's risk tolerance, regulatory obligations, and available resources. This involves assessing the criticality of assets, the frequency of changes, and the potential impact of inaccuracies. The chosen reconciliation strategy should then be aligned with these factors, leveraging the SCCD platform to its fullest potential for automated discovery, reconciliation, and reporting, while incorporating targeted physical verification where necessary. Question 3. The review process indicates that the IT asset inventory within IBM SmartCloud Control Desk V7.5 1 is showing a significant number of discrepancies when compared to physical audits and other discovery tools. Which of the following approaches best addresses this situation to ensure data integrity and compliance? Option A. Manually update the asset records in SCCD to match the physical audit findings, without investigating why the initial data was incorrect. Option B. Initiate a comprehensive reconciliation process by comparing SCCD data against multiple discovery sources and physical audits, identifying the root causes of discrepancies, and implementing corrective actions for both data and underlying processes. Option C. Delete all assets from SCCD that are not physically located or detected by discovery tools, assuming they are legacy or erroneous entries. Option D. Focus on correcting only the discrepancies related to high-value assets, deferring the investigation and correction of other discrepancies to a later date. The correct answer is B. Initiate a comprehensive reconciliation process by comparing SCCD data against multiple discovery sources and physical audits, identifying the root causes of discrepancies, and implementing corrective actions for both data and underlying processes. Explanation. The review process indicates a need to ensure that asset data within IBM SmartCloud Control Desk, SCCD, accurately reflects the organization's actual IT environment. This is crucial for compliance, security, and financial management. The challenge lies in maintaining this accuracy over time, especially when dealing with dynamic IT infrastructures and diverse data sources. A professionally challenging scenario arises when discrepancies are found between SCCD asset inventory and the reality on the ground, potentially due to manual data entry errors, integration issues, or unmanaged asset additions. Careful judgment is required to identify the root cause and implement effective remediation. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a systematic, data-driven investigation to identify and rectify discrepancies. This aligns with the principles of IT asset management, IBM, as outlined in industry, best practices, and regulatory frameworks that emphasize data integrity and auditability. By performing a comprehensive reconciliation, the organization can ensure that its asset records are reliable for decision-making, risk assessment, and compliance reporting. This proactive stance minimizes the risk of financial loss due to unmanaged assets, security vulnerabilities from unknown devices, and audit failures. An incorrect approach that relies solely on manual updates without investigating the root cause of discrepancies is professionally unacceptable. This fails to address the underlying issues, leading to recurring problems and a continued lack of trust in the asset data. It also represents a failure to adhere to the principles of good governance and control, as it allows systemic errors to persist. Another incorrect approach that involves simply deleting assets from SCCD that are not physically present, without understanding why they were recorded in the first place, is also professionally unacceptable. This can mask underlying issues, such as ghost assets created by automated processes or incomplete deprovisioning procedures. It undermines the audit trail and can lead to inaccurate financial reporting and security blind spots. A third incorrect approach that focuses on updating only a subset of discrepancies without a clear prioritization or understanding of their impact is inefficient and ineffective. This can lead to a situation where critical assets remain inaccurately recorded, while less important ones are corrected, leaving the organization exposed to significant risks. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve 1. Understanding the scope and impact of the discrepancies. 2. Identifying the potential root causes, e.g., integration failures, manual errors, process gaps. 3. Prioritizing remediation efforts based on risk and business criticality. 4. Implementing a systematic reconciliation process. 5. Establishing ongoing monitoring and control mechanisms to prevent future discrepancies. 6. Documenting all actions taken for audit and review purposes. Question 4. The analysis reveals that in implementing IBM SmartCloud Control Desk V7.5, 1. For IT asset management, a key challenge is determining the optimal strategy for asset discovery and reconciliation to ensure regulatory compliance without incurring prohibitive operational costs. Considering the need for a robust and auditable asset inventory, which of the following approaches best balances comprehensive discovery, regulatory adherence, and resource efficiency? Option A. Implement a phased approach to asset discovery, prioritizing critical and high-risk assets first, followed by a systematic reconciliation process against procurement and operational data, with continuous refinement of discovery rules. Option B. Aim for immediate 100% discovery of all network-connected devices, regardless of their criticality or regulatory impact, and manually verify each discovered item through extensive physical audits. Option C. Focus exclusively on discovering assets that are directly involved in financial transactions, assuming other assets pose minimal regulatory risk. Option D. Rely primarily on manual asset tagging and periodic, ad hoc network scans, with reconciliation performed only when specific compliance audits are imminent. The correct answer is A. Implement a phased approach to asset discovery, prioritizing critical and high-risk assets first, followed by a systematic reconciliation process against procurement and operational data, with continuous refinement of discovery rules. Explanation: the analysis reveals a common challenge in IT asset management, balancing the need for comprehensive data with the practicalities of implementation and ongoing maintenance within a regulated environment. Specifically, the scenario highlights the tension between achieving absolute accuracy in asset discovery and the potential for overinvesting resources in chasing marginal gains, which could lead to non-compliance if critical assets are overlooked due to resource misallocation. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes the identification and accurate tracking of all IT assets that fall under the purview of relevant regulations, such as those governing data privacy, security, or financial reporting. This aligns with the core principles of IT asset management as outlined in frameworks like ITIL, which emphasize lifecycle management and risk mitigation. By focusing on a phased discovery and reconciliation process, it ensures that critical assets are identified early and resources are allocated efficiently to manage them. This proactive and risk-based approach minimizes the likelihood of regulatory breaches by ensuring that the most important assets are under control, while also allowing for continuous improvement in discovery accuracy over time. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on achieving 100% discovery of every single device, regardless of its criticality or regulatory impact, is professionally unacceptable. This can lead to significant resource drain, delaying the implementation of essential controls for high-risk assets. Such an approach might also overlook the nuances of asset categorization and ownership, potentially leading to gaps in accountability and compliance. Ethically, it fails to prioritize the responsible management of resources and the timely mitigation of regulatory risks. Another incorrect approach that relies on manual data entry and ad hoc discovery methods without a defined process or audit trail is also professionally unacceptable. This introduces a high risk of human error, data inconsistency, and a lack of auditable evidence for compliance. It fails to leverage the capabilities of tools like IBM SmartCloud Control Desk for automated discovery and reconciliation, thereby increasing the likelihood of missing assets or misrepresenting their status, which can have severe regulatory consequences. A further incorrect approach that neglects the ongoing reconciliation and validation of discovered assets against procurement records and operational data is professionally unsound. This leads to a stale and inaccurate asset inventory, rendering it ineffective for compliance purposes. Without regular validation, the system cannot reliably report on the true state of IT assets, creating a significant blind spot for regulatory oversight and risk management. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a thorough understanding of the regulatory landscape, a clear definition of what constitutes a critical asset, and a risk-based approach to asset discovery and management. Professionals should leverage the capabilities of their IT asset management tools to automate processes where possible, establish clear workflows for discovery, reconciliation, and validation, and implement a continuous improvement cycle. Prioritization based on criticality and regulatory impact is key to efficient and effective IT asset management. Question 5. Benchmark analysis indicates that a critical software license managed within IBM SmartCloud Control Desk V7.5 one is due for expiration in 90 days, impacting a core business process. The current license is a perpetual license with annual support and maintenance. What is the most prudent course of action to ensure continued operational functionality and compliance? Option A. Procure a new, similar perpetual license from a different vendor without consulting IBM or conducting a detailed internal usage analysis, assuming the current license terms are no longer favorable. Option B. Allow the current license to expire and plan for a period of operational downtime while a new licensing agreement or solution is procured and implemented. Option C. Begin researching and evaluating alternative software solutions from different vendors that offer similar functionality, with the goal of migrating to a new platform before the current license expires. Option D. Initiate immediate discussions with IBM to explore all available renewal options, including potential discounts for early renewal, alternative licensing models, or bundled support packages, while simultaneously assessing internal usage to confirm the exact scope of required functionality. The correct answer is D. Initiate immediate discussions with IBM to explore all available renewal options, including potential discounts for early renewal, alternative licensing models, or bundled support packages, while simultaneously assessing internal usage to confirm the exact scope of required functionality. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in IT asset management where a critical software license is nearing expiration, impacting business operations. The professional challenge lies in balancing cost-effectiveness, compliance, and operational continuity. The urgency of the situation, coupled with potential financial implications of non-compliance or service disruption, demands a swift yet thorough decision-making process. The need to adhere to IBM's licensing terms and potentially internal procurement policies adds layers of complexity. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach prioritizes understanding the current license agreement and exploring all available renewal or alternative options within the IBM SmartCloud Control Desk framework and IBM's licensing structure. This involves engaging with the vendor to understand renewal terms, potential cost savings, and any new features or support included. It also entails assessing internal usage to determine if the full scope of the license is still required, potentially leading to a reduced renewal cost or a different licensing model. This aligns with best professional practice by ensuring compliance with contractual obligations, mitigating operational risk, and optimizing resource allocation. Adhering to the principles of responsible IT asset management, which emphasizes lifecycle management and cost control, is paramount. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves immediately seeking a third-party, non-IBM solution without fully exploring IBM's renewal options. This could lead to significant integration challenges with existing IBM Smart Cloud Control Desk configurations and potentially violate the terms of the current IBM license agreement, leading to legal and financial penalties. It also bypasses the opportunity to negotiate better terms with the existing vendor. Another incorrect approach is to simply let the license expire without any action. This would result in a direct violation of the software license agreement, leading to potential legal action from IBM, significant fines, and an immediate disruption of critical business services that rely on the licensed software. This demonstrates a failure in proactive asset management and risk mitigation. A third incorrect approach is to procure a new, similar license from a different vendor without a thorough assessment of the existing IBM license's terms and the potential for renewal or renegotiation. This could result in redundant licensing, increased costs, and a fragmented IT environment, making management and support more complex and less efficient. It fails to leverage existing vendor relationships and contractual agreements. Professional reasoning. Professionals should approach such situations by first conducting a comprehensive review of the existing asset's lifecycle, including its contract, usage, and upcoming expiration. This should be followed by direct engagement with the vendor to understand all available options, including renewal, upgrade, or alternative licensing models. Concurrently, an internal assessment of business needs and usage patterns should inform the decision. This structured approach ensures that decisions are data-driven, compliant with regulations and contracts, and aligned with business objectives, thereby minimizing risk and maximizing value. Question 6. Compliance review shows that IBM SmartCloud Control Desk's discovery tools have identified a significant number of software installations on company servers that are not reflected in the current license entitlement records within the system. The IT asset management team needs to address this discrepancy. Which of the following actions represents the most appropriate and compliant first step? Option A. Manually adjust the license entitlement records in IBM SmartCloud Control Desk to reflect the discovered software, assuming the discovery is accurate and licenses were acquired but not recorded. Option B. Conduct a detailed reconciliation within IBM SmartCloud Control Desk, cross-referencing discovered software with purchase orders, existing license entitlements, and deployment history to determine the root cause of the discrepancy. Option C. Ignore the discrepancy, assuming the discovery tool may have generated false positives, and rely solely on the existing, documented license entitlement records. Option D. Initiate a process to immediately uninstall all software identified as not being in the license entitlement records to ensure immediate compliance. The correct answer is D. Initiate a process to immediately uninstall all software identified as not being in the license entitlement records to ensure immediate compliance. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in IT asset management, where the initial discovery of assets does not align with the documented procurement and licensing records. The professional challenge lies in reconciling these discrepancies without compromising compliance, financial accuracy, or operational security. It requires a nuanced understanding of IBM SmartCloud Control Desk, SCCD, capabilities, procurement processes, and the implications of unlicensed software. The need for a timely and accurate resolution is critical to avoid potential audit failures, financial penalties, and security vulnerabilities associated with unmanaged or unauthorized software. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves leveraging SCCD reconciliation features to identify the root cause of the discrepancy. This includes cross-referencing discovered assets with purchase orders, license entitlements, and deployment records within SCCD. The goal is to determine if the discovered assets are legitimate but unrecorded, unauthorized, or if the licensing data itself is inaccurate. This methodical approach ensures that any remediation actions are based on factual data, leading to accurate asset inventory, compliant software usage, and optimized license utilization. This aligns with best practices in IT asset management, emphasizing data integrity and proactive compliance management as mandated by general IT governance principles applicable to the exam's scope. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach is to immediately assume the discovered assets are unauthorized and proceed with immediate removal or deactivation. This fails to account for legitimate assets that may have been missed during initial data entry or procurement processing. It can lead to the removal of critical business software, disrupting operations, and potentially violating contractual obligations if the software is indeed licensed but not properly tracked. This approach demonstrates a lack of due diligence and a failure to utilize the full capabilities of SCCD for investigation. Another incorrect approach is to ignore the discrepancy and assume the existing license records are correct, attributing the discovered assets to potential false positives from discovery tools. This is a significant regulatory and ethical failure. It directly contradicts the principle of maintaining an accurate and auditable asset inventory, which is a cornerstone of IT asset management and compliance. Ignoring such discrepancies leaves the organization vulnerable to audits, potential fines for underlicensing, and security risks from unmanaged software. A third incorrect approach is to manually update license records to match the discovered assets without proper verification of purchase orders or entitlement proofs. While seemingly a quick fix, this bypasses crucial control mechanisms. It can lead to an inflated view of license entitlements without corresponding financial backing, creating a false sense of compliance and potentially masking procurement irregularities. This approach undermines the integrity of the financial and licensing data within SCCD. Professional reasoning. Professionals facing such discrepancies should adopt a structured, data-driven approach. First, thoroughly investigate the discovered assets using SCCD discovery and reconciliation tools. Second, cross-reference findings with procurement records, license entitlement databases, and deployment logs. Third, if discrepancies persist, escalate to relevant stakeholders, e.g., procurement, legal, security for further investigation and decision-making. The decision-making process should prioritize data accuracy, regulatory compliance, operational continuity, and financial accountability, ensuring that all actions are documented and justifiable. Question 7. During the evaluation of the IT asset inventory for IBM SmartCloud Control Desk V7, 5. 1. A significant number of software licenses were identified as unassigned in the system, despite the organization having purchased them. The IT asset management team needs to determine the appropriate course of action to reconcile these discrepancies and ensure compliance and cost effectiveness. Which of the following approaches best addresses this situation? Option A. Initiate a detailed investigation to cross-reference discovery tool data with procurement records, entitlement documents, and usage data to determine the legitimate deployment and ownership of the software before making any reallocation or disposal decisions. Option B. Assume that the unassigned licenses represent a procurement error and proceed with purchasing new licenses for any software that is currently deployed but shows no assigned license. Option C. Immediately reallocate all unassigned licenses to a general IT pool to maximize their availability for future deployments, assuming they are not currently in use. Option D. Mark all unassigned licenses as surplus and proceed with their disposal or deactivation to free up system resources and reduce perceived inventory clutter. The correct answer is A. Initiate a detailed investigation to cross-reference discovery tool data with procurement records, entitlement documents, and usage data to determine the legitimate deployment and ownership of the software before making any reallocation or disposal decisions. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in IT asset management, balancing the need for accurate inventory data with the practicalities of a dynamic IT environment. The professional challenge lies in identifying and reconciling discrepancies between the discovered assets and the existing records, particularly when dealing with a significant number of unassigned software licenses. This requires a methodical approach to avoid both over-licensing, wasting budget, and under-licensing, creating compliance risks. The pressure to quickly resolve these discrepancies, often driven by audit readiness or budget reviews, can lead to hasty decisions. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a systematic investigation into the unassigned licenses. This includes cross-referencing discovery tool data with procurement records, license entitlement documents, and usage data, if available and permissible under data privacy regulations. The goal is to determine the legitimate ownership and deployment status of the software. This aligns with best practices in IT asset management, which emphasize data accuracy, compliance, and cost optimization. By thoroughly investigating, the IT asset manager ensures that the organization is only paying for software it is actively using and is compliant with vendor licensing agreements. This proactive approach minimizes financial risk and operational disruption. Incorrect approach is analysis. One incorrect approach is to immediately reallocate all unassigned licenses to a general pool without proper verification. This fails to account for potential existing deployments or specific departmental needs, leading to potential under-licensing if those licenses were already in use or over-licensing if they are not needed. Ethically, this could lead to non-compliance with vendor agreements if software is deployed without a valid license. Another incorrect approach is to simply write off the unassigned licenses as surplus without investigating their potential use or value. This represents a failure in asset stewardship and can lead to unnecessary expenditure on new licenses later if the surplus licenses were actually needed. It also misses an opportunity for cost savings. A third incorrect approach is to assume all unassigned licenses are redundant and proceed with disposal or deactivation without confirming their status. This could result in the removal of licenses that are actively supporting critical business functions, leading to operational failures and potential business impact. Professional reasoning. Professionals should approach such discrepancies with a structured investigation process. This involves 1. Data gathering. Collect all relevant data from discovery tools, procurement, and entitlement records. 2. Reconciliation. Compare and contrast the data to identify discrepancies. 3. Root cause analysis. Determine why the discrepancies exist, e.g., incomplete discovery, manual deployment, procurement errors. 4. Action planning. Develop a plan to resolve the discrepancies, which may involve reassigning licenses, decommissioning unused software, or updating asset records. 5. Documentation. Maintain clear records of the investigation and resolution. This systematic approach ensures accuracy, compliance, and efficient resource utilization. Question 8. The performance metrics show a consistent and significant discrepancy between the number of software titles discovered by the automated discovery tools and the number of software titles reconciled with an IBM SmartCloud Control Desk V7. 5. 1. This discrepancy is impacting the accuracy of license compliance reports. Which of the following actions is the most appropriate first step to address this issue? Option A. Manually correct the software title count in the IBM SmartCloud Control Desk database to align with the perceived accurate number of installed software titles, and then schedule a one-time full reconciliation. Option B. Escalate the issue to the vendor support for IBM SmartCloud Control Desk, requesting a patch or update to fix the discovery and reconciliation modules without further investigation into the current system configuration. Option C. Disable automated discovery for the software categories exhibiting the largest discrepancies and focus on manual inventory updates for those categories until the automated system can be improved. Option D. Initiate a detailed review of the automated discovery configuration and execution logs to identify potential issues with discovery agents, network connectivity, or data parsing. Simultaneously, examine the reconciliation rules and processes to understand why discovered assets are not being matched or are being incorrectly matched. The correct answer is D. Initiate a detailed review of the automated discovery configuration and execution logs to identify potential issues with discovery agents, network connectivity, or data parsing. Simultaneously, examine the reconciliation rules and processes to understand why discovered assets are not being matched or are being incorrectly matched. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge in IT asset management, balancing the need for accurate inventory data with the practicalities of a dynamic IT environment. The professional challenge lies in identifying the root cause of discrepancies and implementing sustainable solutions, rather than just addressing symptoms. IBM Smart Cloud Control Desk V7. 5. 1. IT asset management implementation requires adherence to best practices for data integrity and compliance, which are implicitly governed by general IT governance principles and potentially specific organizational policies that align with industry standards. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it involves a systematic, data-driven investigation to identify the underlying causes of the performance metric discrepancies. This aligns with the principles of IT asset management, which emphasize accuracy, completeness, and control over IT assets. By focusing on the discovery and reconciliation processes, the solution aims to improve the reliability of the data within IBM Smart Cloud Control Desk, which is crucial for informed decision-making, cost optimization, and risk mitigation. This proactive and analytical method ensures that the asset management system becomes a trusted source of information. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on manual data correction without investigating the root cause is professionally unacceptable. This is because it treats the symptom, inaccurate data, rather than the disease, flaws in discovery or reconciliation processes. Such an approach is inefficient, unsustainable, and prone to recurring errors. It fails to leverage the capabilities of IBM Smart Cloud Control Desk for automated discovery and reconciliation, leading to increased operational overhead and a lack of confidence in the asset data. Ethically, it can lead to misinformed decisions regarding procurement, licensing, and security, potentially exposing the organization to compliance risks or financial penalties. Another incorrect approach that involves disabling automated discovery for certain asset types due to perceived inaccuracies is also professionally unsound. This bypasses the intended functionality of the IT asset management system and creates blind spots in the inventory. It is a reactive measure that sacrifices comprehensive visibility for short-term expediency. This can lead to unmanaged assets, security vulnerabilities, and non-compliance with software licensing agreements, all of which carry significant regulatory and financial risks. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured problem-solving methodology. First, clearly define the observed problem, performance metric discrepancies. Second, gather all relevant data and context, including system logs, discovery reports, and reconciliation logs. Third, hypothesize potential root causes, considering both technical issues e.g., network connectivity, agent deployment, and process issues e.g., manual data entry errors, incorrect configuration. Fourth, test these hypotheses through targeted investigations and analysis. Fifth, implement the most effective solution based on the findings, prioritizing those that address the root cause and improve system integrity. Finally, monitor the implemented solution to ensure its effectiveness and make adjustments as needed. This iterative, analytical approach ensures that asset management remains a valuable and reliable function. Question 9. Cost-benefit analysis shows a significant opportunity to reduce expenditure by decommissioning or reallocating several software licenses identified as underutilized within the organization's environment. However, the specific terms and conditions of these software license agreements are complex and not immediately clear regarding the implications of such actions. What is the most prudent next step to ensure compliance and mitigate risk? Option A. Conduct a thorough review of the specific software license agreements to understand the terms of use, deployment restrictions, and any audit clauses before taking any action. Option B. Immediately proceed with decommissioning or reallocation to realize the projected cost savings, as the analysis clearly indicates financial benefits. Option C. Rely solely on the IT asset management tools reporting to confirm underutilization and proceed with the action, as the tool's data is definitive. Option D. Assume that underutilization automatically permits reallocation or decommissioning without further investigation, as this is a common practice in IT asset management. The correct answer is B. Immediately proceed with decommissioning or reallocation to realize the projected cost savings, as the analysis clearly indicates financial benefits. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in IT asset management, balancing the desire for cost savings through software license optimization with the imperative to maintain compliance and avoid legal repercussions. The professional challenge lies in interpreting the nuances of software licensing agreements, which can be complex and vary significantly between vendors. A hasty decision based solely on perceived cost reduction without a thorough understanding of the licensing terms could lead to significant financial penalties and reputational damage. The need for accurate inventory, diligent tracking of usage, and a clear understanding of contractual obligations makes this a high-stakes decision. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a detailed review of the specific software license agreements for the identified underutilized software. This includes understanding the terms of use, deployment restrictions, and any audit clauses. IBM SmartCloud Control Desk v7. 5. 1. IT Asset Management Implementation Guidelines emphasize the importance of accurate license reconciliation. By verifying that the proposed reallocation or decommissioning aligns with the contractual terms, the organization ensures it remains compliant with its licensing obligations. This proactive verification prevents potential breaches of contract, which could trigger audits, fines, or even legal action from the software vendor. This approach upholds the principle of responsible asset management and adherence to contractual commitments, which are foundational to IT governance and risk management. Incorrect approach is analysis. One incorrect approach is to proceed with decommissioning or reallocating the software solely based on the cost-benefit analysis without verifying license terms. This fails to acknowledge the contractual obligations associated with software licenses. Many licenses are tied to specific hardware, users, or deployment types, and violating these terms, even if the software is underutilized, constitutes a license breach. This can lead to significant financial penalties during a vendor audit, as the organization would be found to be non-compliant. Another incorrect approach is to assume that underutilization automatically grants the right to reallocate or decommission without further investigation. Software license agreements are legally binding documents. They often contain specific clauses regarding transferability, termination, and audit rights. Ignoring these clauses and acting on assumptions can lead to legal disputes and financial liabilities. The regulatory framework for IT asset management, as implied by the exam's focus, stresses adherence to contractual agreements to maintain a compliant and risk-averse IT environment. A third incorrect approach is to rely solely on the IT asset management tools reporting without cross-referencing with the actual license agreements. While tools like IBM SmartCloud Control Desk are powerful for inventory and usage tracking, they do not interpret the legal nuances of license agreements. The tool might indicate underutilization, but it cannot determine if that underutilization permits reallocation or decommissioning under the specific terms of the contract. This oversight can lead to a false sense of security and subsequent noncompliance. Professional reasoning. Professionals faced with this situation should adopt a structured decision-making process. First, thoroughly understand the business objective, cost savings. Second, leverage the IT asset management tool for initial identification of potential optimization opportunities. Third, and critically, engage with legal counsel or licensing experts to meticulously review the relevant software license agreements. Fourth, assess the proposed action against the contractual terms and identify any risks or compliance issues. Fifth, document the entire process, including the rationale for the final decision, to ensure auditability and accountability. This systematic approach, prioritizing contractual compliance and risk mitigation, is essential for effective and ethical IT asset management. Question 10. Regulatory review indicates that the organization is under pressure to reduce IT operational costs by decommissioning a significant number of older servers. These servers contain varying levels of sensitive customer data. The IT asset management team is tasked with developing a disposal strategy. Proposal has been put forward to simply wipe the operating system from these servers and then donate them to a local educational institution to gain a tax benefit, thereby achieving cost savings through reduced disposal fees and tax deductions. This approach aims to minimize immediate expenditure. What is the most appropriate course of action to ensure compliance with data protection regulations and IT asset management best practices? Option A. Engage a third-party disposal vendor without verifying their data sanitization certifications, assuming they will handle data securely to maximize cost savings. Option B. Proceed with wiping the operating system and donating the servers, as this is a common practice and the tax benefit outweighs potential minor data recovery risks. Option C. Prioritize the tax benefit by donating the servers immediately and address any potential data concerns only if a data breach is reported. Option D. Implement a secure data erasure process that meets industry standards and regulatory requirements for data sanitization or destruction, and then proceed with the donation or disposal, ensuring proper documentation of the erasure process. The correct answer is D. Implement a secure data erasure process that meets industry standards and regulatory requirements for data sanitization or destruction, and then proceed with the donation or disposal, ensuring proper documentation of the erasure process. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the immediate need for cost savings with the long-term implications of data security and compliance. The pressure to reduce expenditure can lead to overlooking critical regulatory requirements, potentially exposing the organization to significant financial penalties and reputational damage. The implementation of IT asset management (ITAM) solutions like IBM SmartCloud Control Desk (SCCD) is directly tied to ensuring that all IT assets, including those containing sensitive data, are properly accounted for, secured, and disposed of in accordance with relevant regulations. The core challenge lies in making a decision that appears financially prudent in the short term, but demonstrably violates regulatory mandates for data handling and asset lifecycle management. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach prioritizes adherence to the regulatory framework governing data protection and IT asset disposal. This involves ensuring that any process for decommissioning IT assets, especially those containing sensitive information, includes a secure data sanitization or destruction phase that is auditable and compliant with the specified regulations. Implementing a robust data erasure policy, verified by documentation and potentially third-party audits, is paramount. This aligns with the principles of data minimization, security by design, and accountability, which are fundamental to ITAM and regulatory compliance. By mandating secure disposal, the organization upholds its legal obligations and protects itself from data breach liabilities. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves proceeding with the disposal of IT assets without a verified data sanitization process, solely based on the cost-saving directive. directly violates regulations that mandate the protection of sensitive data throughout its lifecycle, including disposal. Such an action would constitute a failure in due diligence and could lead to severe penalties for data breaches. Another incorrect approach is to assume that simply removing data from the operating system is sufficient. This is a common misconception and is not considered secure erasure by regulatory standards. Data can often be recovered from storage media even after deletion, leading to potential data leakage and noncompliance with data protection laws. A third incorrect approach is to delegate the disposal process to an external vendor without conducting adequate due diligence on their data sanitization and destruction capabilities, and without obtaining verifiable proof of compliance. This abdicates responsibility and leaves the organization vulnerable if the vendor fails to meet regulatory requirements, resulting in a breach of compliance. Professional reasoning. Professionals facing such a dilemma should employ a risk-based decision-making framework. This involves 1. Identifying all applicable regulatory requirements related to data protection and IT asset disposal. 2. Assessing the potential risks associated with each disposal approach, including financial, legal, and reputational consequences. 3. Evaluating the cost-benefit analysis not just in terms of immediate savings, but also in terms of the total cost of ownership, including potential fines and remediation expenses. 4. Consulting with legal and compliance departments to ensure all decisions align with regulatory mandates. 5. Prioritizing compliance and security over short-term cost savings when there is a conflict. 6. Documenting all decisions and the rationale behind them, ensuring transparency and auditability. Question 11. Process analysis reveals that IBM SmartCloud Control Desk v7.5 1 is being implemented for IT asset management. To ensure absolute priority on jurisdiction requirements, which of the following implementation strategies best balances comprehensive asset tracking with employee privacy and data security? Option A. Deploy all data collection features immediately to ensure maximum visibility of all IT assets, with a plan to address privacy concerns retrospectively. Option B. Prioritize the collection of all available endpoint data to create a complete digital footprint, assuming that any privacy implications can be managed through general IT security policies. Option C. Focus solely on technical controls for asset discovery and tracking, deferring any discussions or implementations related to employee privacy until after the initial deployment is complete. Option D. Implement a phased approach, starting with essential asset identification and inventory data, followed by progressive integration of more detailed information with robust privacy controls and employee communication. The correct answer is A. Deploy all data collection features immediately to ensure maximum visibility of all IT assets, with a plan to address privacy concerns retrospectively. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in IT asset management, balancing the need for comprehensive data collection with the privacy and security concerns of employees. The professional challenge lies in implementing a robust IT asset management solution like IBM SmartCloud Control Desk v7.5, one that adheres to regulatory requirements without infringing on employee rights or creating unnecessary security vulnerabilities. The specific jurisdiction for this exam is not explicitly stated, but for the purpose of this question, we will assume a general framework of data privacy and IT governance best practices that are common across many regulated environments, focusing on principles that would be applicable in a U.S. context given the typical focus of such certifications. The need for absolute priority on jurisdiction requirements means that any proposed solution must demonstrably align with applicable laws and internal policies governing data handling and asset tracking. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach emphasizes a phased implementation that prioritizes data minimization, anonymization where possible, and clear communication with employees. This aligns with the principle of privacy by design and security by design, which are foundational to many data protection regulations, e.g., GDPR principles. Though not directly applicable here, the spirit is relevant. By first focusing on essential asset data, and then progressively incorporating more detailed information with appropriate consent and security measures, the organization demonstrates a commitment to responsible data stewardship. This approach minimizes the risk of overcollection of sensitive personal information, reduces the attack surface for potential data breaches, and builds trust with employees. It also ensures that the implementation remains compliant with any internal IT governance policies and external regulations that mandate data minimization and purpose limitation. Incorrect approach is analysis. One incorrect approach involves immediately deploying the full suite of data collection features without a thorough assessment of necessity or employee impact. This would likely violate data privacy principles by collecting more information than is strictly required for IT asset management, potentially capturing sensitive personal data without adequate justification or consent. This could lead to regulatory noncompliance and significant ethical breaches. Another incorrect approach is to delay the implementation of certain data collection features indefinitely due to privacy concerns, without establishing a clear roadmap for addressing them. This hinders the effectiveness of the IT asset management program, leaving the organization vulnerable to unmanaged assets and potential security risks. It fails to proactively address the regulatory requirement for effective asset management, while also not adequately mitigating privacy risks. A third incorrect approach is to rely solely on technical controls without addressing the human element, such as employee communication and training. While technical controls are crucial, a lack of transparency and employee buy-in can lead to resistance, workarounds, and a perception of surveillance, undermining the overall success of the IT asset management initiative and potentially creating ethical concerns. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a risk-based, phased approach to implementing IT asset management solutions. This involves 1. Understanding the specific regulatory landscape and internal policies governing data collection and IT asset management. 2. Conducting a thorough data impact assessment to identify what asset data is truly necessary and what personal data might be incidentally collected. 3. Prioritizing the collection of essential asset information that directly supports IT governance and security objectives. 4. Developing clear policies and procedures for data handling, access control, and retention, ensuring compliance with jurisdictional requirements. 5. Implementing data minimization and anonymization techniques wherever feasible. 6. Communicating transparently with employees about the purpose of data collection and the measures taken to protect their privacy. 7. Iteratively expanding data collection capabilities based on demonstrated need and with appropriate safeguards and employee consent. 8. Regularly reviewing and auditing the IT asset management processes to ensure ongoing compliance and effectiveness. Question 12. Risk assessment procedures indicate that the current software asset inventory is incomplete, posing potential licensing compliance and security vulnerabilities. To address this, a new discovery tool is being considered for deployment across the organization. Which of the following approaches best balances the need for comprehensive asset data with regulatory compliance and operational stability? Option A. Deploy the discovery tool across all endpoints and servers simultaneously after initial configuration, without a pilot phase. Option B. Deploy the discovery tool only on critical servers, as these are the most likely to host high-value software licenses. Option C. Implement the discovery tool in a phased manner, beginning with a pilot deployment in a representative segment of the IT environment to assess performance and refine configurations before a full rollout. Option D. Configure the discovery tool to collect all available system and user data to ensure maximum visibility, even if some data is not directly related to software assets. The correct answer is A. Deploy the discovery tool across all endpoints and servers simultaneously after initial configuration, without a pilot phase. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in IT asset management, balancing the need for comprehensive data collection with the practicalities of implementation and potential user impact. The challenge lies in identifying the most effective and compliant method for discovering and cataloging software assets within a complex, multi-vendor environment. Overly aggressive or poorly planned discovery can lead to system performance degradation, user disruption, and potential breaches of privacy or data security policies, all of which have regulatory implications. The need for accurate inventory is paramount for licensing compliance, security vulnerability management, and financial planning, but the method chosen must be proportionate and adhere to established IT governance frameworks. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach emphasizes a phased, risk-based deployment of discovery tools, starting with a pilot program in a controlled environment. This aligns with best practices in IT project management and regulatory compliance, particularly concerning data privacy and system integrity. By piloting, organizations can validate the tool's effectiveness, assess its impact on network and system performance, and refine configurations before a full rollout. This proactive approach minimizes the risk of widespread disruption and ensures that the discovery process itself does not inadvertently create security vulnerabilities or violate data handling policies. It also allows for the identification and mitigation of any potential licensing compliance issues discovered during the pilot phase, thereby supporting the overall IT asset management objectives in a controlled and compliant manner. This method directly supports the principles of responsible data collection and system management, which are often implicitly or explicitly required by IT governance frameworks and data protection regulations. Incorrect approaches analysis. Implementing discovery tools across the entire organization without prior testing or a phased rollout is a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This approach disregards the potential for system instability, performance degradation, and unintended data exposure, which could violate data protection laws and internal security policies. It demonstrates a lack of due diligence and risk management. Deploying discovery tools only on critical servers and ignoring endpoints or user devices is also problematic. While focusing on critical assets is important, a comprehensive IT asset management strategy requires visibility across the entire IT estate. Incomplete inventory can lead to under-licensing of software on less critical systems, creating compliance risks and leaving security vulnerabilities unaddressed on unmonitored devices. This approach fails to meet the full scope of IT asset management objectives and regulatory requirements for a complete asset inventory. Utilizing discovery tools that collect excessive personal or sensitive data beyond what is necessary for software asset identification is a direct violation of data privacy principles and regulations. Such an approach increases the risk of data breaches and noncompliance with data minimization requirements. It demonstrates a disregard for user privacy and the legal obligations surrounding the handling of personal information. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a structured, risk-aware approach to implementing IT asset management solutions. This involves understanding the specific regulatory landscape applicable to their organization, e.g., data protection laws, software licensing agreements. The decision-making process should prioritize minimizing risk to business operations, data security, and legal compliance. A phased implementation, starting with pilot programs and thorough testing, allows for iterative refinement and validation of the chosen tools and processes. This approach ensures that the benefits of IT asset management are realized without compromising operational integrity or regulatory standing. Professionals must always consider the principle of proportionality, ensuring that the methods used to achieve ITAM objectives are appropriate and do not create undue risks or burdens. Question 13. Implementation of IBM SmartCloud Control Desk v7. 5. 1. IT asset management requires the collection of data related to software and hardware usage. Considering the potential for incidental collection of personal information, what is the most appropriate approach to ensure regulatory compliance and ethical data handling? Option A. Proceed with comprehensive data collection as enabled by the system's capabilities to maximize the benefits of IT asset management, assuming implied consent due to employment. Option B. Implement data collection without specific user notification, relying on general company IT usage policies that permit monitoring. Option C. Focus solely on collecting technical asset information and ignore any potential personal data that might be incidentally captured, as it is not the primary objective. Option D. Obtain explicit consent from all users whose data might be collected, clearly outlining the scope and purpose of the data collection, and providing options for opting out where feasible. The correct answer is D. Obtain explicit consent from all users whose data might be collected, clearly outlining the scope and purpose of the data collection, and providing options for opting out where feasible. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in IT asset management, balancing the need for comprehensive data collection with the privacy rights and consent requirements of individuals whose data might be incidentally captured. In the context of IBM SmartCloud Control Desk v7. 5. 1. Which can track software and hardware assets, there's a risk of collecting personal information if not configured and managed carefully. The professional challenge lies in ensuring that the implementation adheres to relevant data protection regulations without hindering the core IT asset management objectives. This requires a nuanced understanding of both technical capabilities and legal obligations. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach prioritizes obtaining explicit consent and clearly defining the scope of data collection. This aligns with the principles of data privacy regulations, which typically require a lawful basis for processing personal data, often including consent. By informing users about what data will be collected, why it's being collected, and how it will be used, and then obtaining their explicit agreement, the organization establishes a transparent and legally sound process. This approach minimizes the risk of privacy violations and builds trust with employees, ensuring compliance with data protection laws and ethical considerations. It also ensures that the IT asset management implementation serves its intended purpose without overstepping boundaries. Incorrect approaches analysis. Proceeding with data collection without explicit consent or a clear legal basis is a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This approach violates the fundamental principles of data privacy, potentially contravening regulations that mandate consent or legitimate interest for data processing. It exposes the organization to legal penalties, reputational damage, and loss of employee trust. Implementing data collection solely based on the technical capability of the system, without considering the nature of the data or the rights of individuals, is another failure. This demonstrates a lack of due diligence and a disregard for privacy implications. It suggests a reactive rather than a proactive approach to compliance, which is professionally unacceptable in IT asset management. Focusing only on the immediate benefits of IT asset management without addressing the privacy implications is a failure to conduct a thorough risk assessment. This oversight can lead to unintended consequences, including the collection of sensitive personal information that is not necessary for asset tracking, thereby increasing the organization's liability and creating ethical dilemmas. Professional reasoning. Professionals implementing IT asset management solutions must adopt a risk-based and compliance-first mindset. The decision-making process should involve 1. Identifying all potential personal data that could be collected by the system. 2. Determining the legal basis for collecting such data, prioritizing consent where personal data is involved. 3. Developing clear policies and procedures for data collection, usage, and retention, ensuring they are communicated to all stakeholders. 4. Conducting a data protection impact assessment (DPIA) to identify and mitigate privacy risks. 5. Implementing technical and organizational measures to safeguard collected data. 6. Regularly reviewing and updating the implementation to ensure ongoing compliance with evolving regulations and best practices. Question 14. The efficiency study reveals that the IT asset management team is experiencing delays in reconciling software license entitlements with deployed software instances within IBM SmartCloud Control Desk v7. 5. 1. This delay is primarily due to the manual cross-referencing of data from disparate sources. Which of the following approaches best addresses this challenge while ensuring regulatory compliance with software licensing agreements? Option A. Prioritize the reconciliation of only the most critical software applications, deferring the reconciliation of less critical ones to a later date. Option B. Focus on documenting the existing manual reconciliation process in detail without making immediate changes to the tools or procedures. Option C. Implement automated discovery tools integrated with IBM SmartCloud Control Desk to continuously scan the environment and reconcile license entitlements with deployed software, establishing alerts for any discrepancies. Option D. Temporarily suspend software license audits until the reconciliation process can be expedited through additional manual resources. The correct answer is C. Implement automated discovery tools integrated with IBM SmartCloud Control Desk to continuously scan the environment and reconcile license entitlements with deployed software, establishing alerts for any discrepancies. Explanation. The efficiency study reveals a potential gap in the IT asset management (ITAM) process related to the accurate tracking of software licenses, which directly impacts regulatory compliance and financial governance. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing operational efficiency with strict adherence to licensing agreements and potentially internal audit requirements. A failure to accurately track software licenses can lead to significant financial penalties from software vendors, audit failures, and reputational damage. The correct approach emphasizes proactive identification and remediation of licensing discrepancies. This aligns with best professional practice by ensuring that the organization maintains compliance with software license agreements, which are legally binding contracts. Adhering to these agreements prevents costly audits, fines, and potential legal action from software vendors. Furthermore, accurate license tracking supports sound financial management by preventing overspending on unnecessary licenses and ensuring that all deployed software is properly accounted for, which is a key tenet of responsible IT asset management and often a requirement for internal and external audits. An incorrect approach that involves ignoring minor discrepancies or delaying remediation efforts poses significant regulatory and ethical risks. Ignoring discrepancies can be interpreted as a willful disregard for contractual obligations, potentially leading to severe penalties during a software audit. This also creates an ethical dilemma by potentially misrepresenting the organization's compliance posture to stakeholders. Another incorrect approach, such as relying solely on manual reconciliation without leveraging the capabilities of IBM SmartCloud Control Desk, is inefficient and prone to human error, increasing the likelihood of compliance breaches. This approach fails to utilize the tools provided for effective ITAM and can lead to a false sense of security regarding compliance. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes risk assessment and mitigation. When faced with potential compliance issues, the first step is to thoroughly investigate the scope and impact of the discrepancy. This involves leveraging available tools like IBM SmartCloud Control Desk to gather accurate data. The next step is to develop and implement a remediation plan that addresses the root cause of the issue. This plan should be documented and communicated to relevant stakeholders. Finally, ongoing monitoring and regular audits are crucial to ensure sustained compliance and to identify any new issues promptly. This systematic approach ensures that ITAM practices are not only efficient, but also robustly compliant with all applicable regulations and contractual obligations. Question 15. Governance review demonstrates that the implementation of IBM SmartCloud Control Desk v7. 5.1 for IT asset management has been completed from a purely technical deployment perspective, with asset discovery and inventory functions operational. However, there is no explicit mapping of discovered asset attributes to specific regulatory compliance requirements, nor are there automated workflows designed to flag assets that may fall out of compliance based on their lifecycle stage or configuration. Which of the following approaches best ensures that the ITAM implementation actively supports ongoing regulatory compliance? Option A. Conduct a series of manual, post-implementation audits of the discovered asset data to identify any potential compliance gaps that may exist, and then manually remediate these findings. Option B. Develop and implement automated workflows within IBM SmartCloud Control Desk that link asset attributes to specific regulatory compliance controls, enabling proactive identification and reporting of compliance deviations throughout the asset lifecycle. Option C. Rely on the IT asset discovery and inventory functions of IBM SmartCloud Control Desk to automatically ensure compliance, without any specific configuration or workflow adjustments related to regulatory mandates. Option D. Focus on optimizing the cost-effectiveness of the IT asset inventory and discovery processes within IBM SmartCloud Control Desk, assuming that regulatory compliance will be addressed through separate, ad hoc initiatives. The correct answer is B. Develop and implement automated workflows within IBM SmartCloud Control Desk that link asset attributes to specific regulatory compliance controls, enabling proactive identification and reporting of compliance deviations throughout the asset lifecycle. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge in IT asset management (ITAM), where the implementation of a new system, IBM SmartCloud Control Desk v7. 5.1, must align with existing regulatory compliance frameworks. The professional challenge lies in ensuring that the asset discovery and lifecycle management processes, as configured within the new tool, actively support and do not inadvertently create gaps in adherence to the specified regulatory requirements. This requires a deep understanding of both the technical capabilities of the tool and the nuances of the regulatory landscape. Careful judgment is needed to balance the efficiency gains of automation with the non-negotiable demands of compliance. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it proactively integrates regulatory requirements into the core configuration and operational procedures of IBM SmartCloud Control Desk. By mapping asset data fields to specific regulatory mandates and establishing automated workflows for compliance checks and reporting, the organization ensures that the IBM system becomes a tool for compliance, not a source of risk. This aligns with the principle of compliance by design, where regulatory considerations are embedded from the outset, minimizing the likelihood of future remediation efforts and potential penalties. It demonstrates a commitment to responsible data stewardship and operational integrity. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on technical deployment without considering regulatory mapping fails to acknowledge the purpose of IBM beyond inventory. This leads to a system that may accurately track assets but cannot provide the necessary auditable evidence for regulatory compliance, creating significant ethical and regulatory failures. Such an approach ignores the fundamental requirement that assets, especially those handling sensitive data or critical infrastructure, must be managed in a way that satisfies legal and industry standards. Another incorrect approach that prioritizes cost reduction over comprehensive regulatory integration is equally problematic. While efficiency is important, compromising on the ability to demonstrate compliance can lead to far greater financial and reputational damage in the event of an audit failure or data breach. This approach demonstrates a lack of understanding of the true value of IBM in mitigating risk and upholding corporate responsibility. It prioritizes short-term savings over long-term security and legal standing. A third incorrect approach that relies on manual, post-implementation audits to identify compliance gaps is inefficient and reactive. It assumes that the system, once deployed, will inherently be compliant, which is a dangerous assumption. This method creates a reactive posture, increasing the risk of non-compliance going undetected for extended periods. It fails to leverage the proactive capabilities of IBM SmartCloud Control Desk for continuous compliance monitoring and introduces a higher probability of human error in manual reconciliation. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured approach. 1. Thoroughly understand the specific regulatory requirements applicable to the organization's IT assets. 2. Map these requirements to the functionalities and data points available within IBM SmartCloud Control Desk. 3. Prioritize the integration of compliance checks and reporting mechanisms into the system's configuration and workflows during the implementation phase. 4. Develop clear operational procedures that guide asset management activities with a compliance-first mindset. 5. Establish a continuous monitoring and auditing framework that leverages the tool's capabilities to ensure ongoing adherence to regulations. 6. Regularly review and update configurations and procedures as regulations evolve or new asset types are introduced. Question 16. Operational review demonstrates that the IBM SmartCloud Control Desk V7.5 One IT asset management implementation is nearing completion. To ensure regulatory compliance, particularly concerning data privacy and security, which of the following approaches to data discovery and inventory is most professionally sound? Option A. Prioritize the identification and classification of sensitive data types, e.g., PI, financial data, intellectual property, and then tailor the discovery and inventory processes to collect only the necessary information related to these classifications, ensuring adherence to data minimization principles. Option B. Implement a comprehensive data discovery process that inventories all data elements across all managed assets with subsequent review for sensitive information. Option C. Deploy broad network scanning tools to gather as much information as possible about asset configurations and installed software, with a plan to filter out sensitive data post-collection. Option D. Focus on a complete technical inventory of all hardware and software components, assuming that data privacy concerns will be addressed through separate security policies. The correct answer is B. Implement a comprehensive data discovery process that inventories all data elements across all managed assets, with subsequent review for sensitive information. Explanation: this scenario presents a common challenge in IT asset management, balancing the need for comprehensive data collection with the privacy and security implications of that data. The professional challenge lies in identifying and implementing an asset management strategy that adheres to regulatory requirements without inadvertently creating new compliance risks or compromising sensitive information. Careful judgment is required to select an approach that is both effective for IBM and legally sound. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a risk-based methodology aligned with data protection principles. By focusing on identifying and classifying sensitive data first, the organization can then tailor its discovery and inventory processes to collect only the necessary information, thereby minimizing the exposure of personal or confidential data. This proactive stance is crucial for demonstrating due diligence and compliance with data privacy regulations, such as those that might govern the handling of personally identifiable information, PI, or proprietary business data, ensuring that the IBM implementation itself does not become a source of regulatory noncompliance. An incorrect approach that involves broad, unfettered data collection without regard for data classification or privacy risks is professionally unacceptable. This failure directly contravenes the principles of data minimization and purpose limitation, which are fundamental to many data protection frameworks. Such an approach could lead to the unauthorized collection and storage of sensitive data, creating significant regulatory and ethical liabilities, including potential fines and reputational damage. Another incorrect approach, focusing solely on technical discovery without considering the legal and policy implications of the data being discovered, is also professionally flawed. This overlooks the critical aspect of regulatory compliance, which extends beyond mere technical inventory to encompass how that inventory is managed, secured, and utilized. Failing to integrate legal and policy considerations into the IBM strategy can result in a system that technically functions but operates outside of legal boundaries. The professional reasoning process for similar situations should involve a multidisciplinary approach. First, clearly define the scope and objectives of the IT asset management implementation, explicitly considering regulatory obligations. Second, conduct a thorough data classification exercise to understand the types of data that will be discovered and inventoried, paying close attention to sensitive or regulated information. Third, design discovery and inventory processes that are risk-averse and data minimizing, collecting only what is necessary and permissible. Fourth, establish clear policies and procedures for data handling, security, and access control within the IBM system. Finally, ensure ongoing monitoring and auditing to maintain compliance and adapt to evolving regulatory landscapes. Question 17. Investigation of potential security vulnerabilities within a large, dynamic IT asset inventory requires a systematic approach to risk assessment. Given the constraints of time and resources, which methodology best aligns with the principles of IT asset management as implemented by IBM SmartCloud Control Desk v7? 5. 1. For identifying and prioritizing risks. Option A. Prioritize risk assessment efforts on assets identified as critical to business operations and those with known exploitable vulnerabilities, using a defined impact and likelihood matrix. Option B. Rely on anecdotal reports from IT staff and recent security incidents to identify and assess risks, prioritizing those that have generated the most discussion. Option C. Conduct a comprehensive risk assessment on every single IT asset within the inventory, regardless of its criticality or known vulnerabilities, to ensure no potential risk is overlooked. Option D. Focus risk assessment exclusively on the sheer volume of assets, allocating resources to assess the largest categories of assets first, assuming higher volume equates to higher risk. Correct answer is A. Prioritize risk assessment efforts on assets identified as critical to business operations and those with known, exploitable vulnerabilities, using a defined impact and likelihood matrix. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge in IT asset management, balancing the need for comprehensive risk assessment with the practical constraints of resource allocation and the dynamic nature of IT environments. The core professional challenge lies in identifying and prioritizing risks effectively without becoming overwhelmed by data or missing critical vulnerabilities. The chosen approach must align with the principles of IT asset management as implemented through IBM SmartCloud Control Desk v7. 5. 1. Focusing on proactive identification and mitigation of potential threats to asset integrity and operational continuity. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it systematically identifies potential threats, assesses their likelihood and impact, and prioritizes mitigation efforts based on the severity of the risk. This aligns with the regulatory framework for IT asset management, which emphasizes a structured and evidence-based approach to risk management. By focusing on critical assets and known vulnerabilities, it ensures that resources are directed where they are most needed, maximizing the effectiveness of risk mitigation strategies and adhering to the principles of due diligence in asset protection. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on the quantity of assets without considering their criticality or potential impact fails to meet regulatory expectations for risk assessment. It is ethically problematic as it may lead to the misallocation of resources, leaving high-risk, critical assets inadequately protected. Another incorrect approach that relies on anecdotal evidence or gut feeling rather than a structured assessment process is professionally unacceptable. This lacks the objectivity and rigor required by regulatory guidelines and can lead to biased decision-making, potentially overlooking significant risks. A third incorrect approach that attempts to address every perceived risk regardless of its likelihood or impact is inefficient and unsustainable. This can lead to alert fatigue and a dilution of focus, ultimately diminishing the effectiveness of the risk management program and failing to comply with the spirit of prudent resource management mandated by regulatory frameworks. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with understanding the organization's risk appetite and tolerance. This involves defining clear criteria for risk assessment, including impact categories e.g., financial, operational, reputational, and likelihood scales. The process should then involve systematically identifying assets, their associated vulnerabilities, and potential threats. Subsequently, risks should be quantified or qualified, and a prioritization matrix should be used to rank them. Finally, mitigation strategies should be developed and implemented for the highest priority risks, with ongoing monitoring and review to ensure their effectiveness. This structured approach ensures compliance, promotes efficient resource allocation, and fosters a proactive risk management culture. Question 18. What factors determine the prioritization of IT assets for risk assessment within an IBM SmartCloud Control Desk V7? 5. 1. IT asset management implementation, considering their potential impact on business continuity and data security. Option A. The criticality of the asset to core business processes, the sensitivity of the data it processes or stores, and its exposure to known cyber threats. Option B. The number of users who have direct access to the IT asset. Option C. The initial purchase price of the IT asset and its warranty period. Option D. The physical location of the IT asset within the data center and its color. The correct answer is A. The criticality of the asset to core business processes, the sensitivity of the data it processes or stores, and its exposure to known cyber threats. Explanation: scenario analysis. Implementing IT asset management ITAM with an IBM Smart Cloud Control Desk SCCD V7. 5. 1. Particularly concerning risk assessment. Presents a professional challenge due to the dynamic nature of IT environments and the critical need to align IT assets with business objectives while mitigating potential threats. The challenge lies in accurately identifying, prioritizing, and quantifying risks associated with IT assets throughout their lifecycle, from procurement to disposal. This requires a thorough understanding of both the technical aspects of the assets and their business impact, ensuring that risk assessments are comprehensive, actionable, and contribute to informed decision-making. Integration of risk assessment into the ITAM process is paramount for maintaining compliance, optimizing resource allocation, and safeguarding organizational data and operations. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a systematic evaluation of potential threats, vulnerabilities, and the business impact of IT assets. This includes considering factors such as the criticality of the asset to business operations, the sensitivity of data it handles, its exposure to external threats, e.g., cyber attacks, and the likelihood of failure or compromise. A robust risk assessment framework, aligned with industry best practices and any applicable regulatory guidelines relevant to the jurisdiction of the exam, which is assumed to be U.S.-based for this context, focusing on general IT governance principles often reflected in U.S. regulations like NIST, would prioritize risks based on their potential severity and probability. This allows for the allocation of resources to mitigate the most significant risks first, ensuring the protection of critical business functions and sensitive information. This approach is best professional practice because it directly supports the core objectives of ITAM, ensuring asset availability, integrity, and confidentiality, thereby minimizing operational disruptions and financial losses. It also facilitates compliance with data protection and security mandates. Incorrect approach is analysis. Focusing solely on the acquisition cost of IT assets for risk assessment is an incorrect approach. While cost is a factor in asset management, it does not directly correlate with the risk an asset poses. An inexpensive asset could be critical to a core business process or handle highly sensitive data, making its failure or compromise a significant risk. This approach fails to consider the operational and security implications, leading to misallocation of resources and potentially leaving critical assets unprotected. Prioritizing risk assessment based on the age of the IT asset is also an incorrect approach. While older assets may have a higher likelihood of hardware failure, age alone is not a definitive indicator of risk. A newer asset could have unpatched vulnerabilities or be deployed in a high-threat environment, posing a greater risk than an older, well-maintained, and properly secured asset. This approach overlooks crucial security and operational factors. Evaluating risk solely based on the vendor reputation of the IT asset is an incomplete and potentially flawed approach. While vendor reputation can be an indicator of reliability and security, it is not a substitute for a comprehensive risk assessment. A reputable vendor could still produce an asset with a specific vulnerability, or the asset's deployment and configuration within the organization could introduce significant risks regardless of the vendor's standing. This approach relies on assumptions rather than objective analysis of the asset's specific context and potential threats. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a risk-based approach to IBM that is integrated into the SCCD framework. This involves establishing clear criteria for risk identification and assessment, considering technical vulnerabilities, business impact, and threat landscapes. The process should be iterative, with regular reviews and updates to reflect changes in the IT environment and threat landscape. When faced with a scenario requiring risk assessment, professionals should ask, what is the potential impact of this asset's failure or compromise on business operations and data? And what are the most likely threats and vulnerabilities associated with this asset in its current deployment? This systematic questioning, combined with a structured risk assessment methodology, ensures that resources are effectively directed towards mitigating the most significant risks, thereby safeguarding the organization's assets and business continuity. Question 19. When evaluating the IT asset risk landscape for IBM SmartCloud Control Desk V7. 5. 1. IT asset management implementation. Which approach best ensures a comprehensive and actionable understanding of potential threats and vulnerabilities? Option A. Conducting a risk assessment solely on the total number of IT assets discovered, assuming that a higher quantity inherently implies a greater risk exposure. Option B. Prioritizing risk assessment efforts based on the criticality of IT assets to business operations and the potential impact of their compromise, supported by documented threat intelligence and vulnerability data. Option C. Focusing the risk assessment exclusively on assets that have experienced recent security incidents, neglecting potential risks to other assets that have not yet been affected. Option D. Relying on the subjective opinions of IT staff regarding which assets are most likely to be targeted by threats, without formal documentation or data analysis. The correct answer is B. Prioritizing risk assessment efforts based on the criticality of IT assets to business operations and the potential impact of their compromise, supported by documented threat intelligence and vulnerability data. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge in IT asset management, balancing the need for comprehensive risk assessment with the practical constraints of resource allocation and the dynamic nature of IT environments. The professional challenge lies in identifying and prioritizing risks effectively without becoming overwhelmed by data or overlooking critical vulnerabilities. A robust risk assessment process is crucial for demonstrating due diligence and ensuring compliance with IBM SmartCloud Control Desk V7. 5. 1. IT Asset Management Implementation Guidelines, which implicitly require a proactive approach to managing IT assets and their associated risks. The correct approach emphasizes a systematic and documented process that aligns with best practices for risk management within an IT asset lifecycle. It involves identifying potential threats, assessing their likelihood and impact, and then developing mitigation strategies. This aligns with the principles of responsible IT asset management, ensuring that investments are protected and that business operations are not unduly disrupted by IT-related risks. By focusing on the criticality of assets and the potential business impact, this approach ensures that resources are directed towards the most significant risks, thereby optimizing the effectiveness of the IBM program. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on the number of assets without considering their criticality or the potential impact of their compromise would be professionally unacceptable. This would lead to a misallocation of resources, potentially overlooking high-impact risks associated with fewer, but more critical, assets. Such an approach fails to demonstrate a nuanced understanding of risk and could result in significant financial or operational damage if a critical asset is compromised. Another incorrect approach that relies on anecdotal evidence or personal opinion rather than a structured assessment methodology would also be a regulatory and ethical failure. This lacks objectivity, is not repeatable, and cannot be defended to auditors or stakeholders. It also fails to leverage the capabilities of IBM SmartCloud Control Desk for systematic risk tracking and management. Finally, an approach that ignores the potential for emerging threats or changes in the IT landscape would be a failure to adapt and maintain a relevant risk posture, leading to a false sense of security. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve 1. Understanding the scope and objectives of the IT asset management program. 2. Identifying all potential risk categories relevant to IT assets, e.g., security, operational, financial, compliance. 3. Establishing clear criteria for risk assessment, including likelihood, impact, and risk appetite. 4. Utilizing available tools and data, like those within IBM SmartCloud Control Desk, to gather information and perform assessments. 5. Prioritizing risks based on the established criteria and developing actionable mitigation plans. 6. Regularly reviewing and updating the risk assessment to account for changes in the IT environment and threat landscape. Question 20. Market research demonstrates that organizations often struggle to effectively prioritize IT asset risks due to limited resources and the sheer volume of assets. Considering the principles of IT asset management within the context of IBM Smart Cloud Control Desk v7. 5. 1. Which of the following approaches to risk assessment is most aligned with best professional practice for ensuring comprehensive coverage and efficient resource allocation? Option A. Adopting a purely reactive risk management strategy, addressing security incidents and asset failures only after they occur to minimize upfront assessment costs. Option B. Conducting a broad, high-level risk assessment annually that categorizes all assets into general risk buckets without detailed analysis of individual asset vulnerabilities or their specific business impact. Option C. Implementing a risk assessment framework that systematically evaluates each IT asset based on its potential impact on business operations and the likelihood of a threat exploiting a vulnerability, leading to a prioritized list of mitigation actions. Option D. Relying exclusively on automated scanning tools to identify potential risks, without incorporating human judgment or considering the specific business context of each asset. The correct answer is C. Implementing a risk assessment framework that systematically evaluates each IT asset based on its potential impact on business operations and the likelihood of a threat exploiting a vulnerability, leading to a prioritized list of mitigation actions. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge in IT asset management, balancing the need for comprehensive risk assessment with the practical constraints of resource allocation and the dynamic nature of IT environments. The professional challenge lies in identifying and prioritizing risks effectively without succumbing to analysis paralysis or overlooking critical vulnerabilities. Careful judgment is required to ensure that the risk assessment process is both thorough and actionable, directly informing decisions about asset lifecycle management and security posture. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it aligns with the principles of proactive risk management, a cornerstone of effective IT asset management. By focusing on the impact and likelihood of identified risks, it allows for a systematic prioritization of mitigation efforts. This ensures that resources are directed towards the most significant threats, thereby optimizing the return on investment for security and management initiatives. Furthermore, a structured approach to risk assessment, as implied by the correct option, facilitates compliance with internal policies and potentially external regulatory requirements that mandate risk-based decision-making for IT assets. An incorrect approach that involves a purely reactive stance, addressing risks only after they manifest, represents a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This reactive posture can lead to substantial financial losses, reputational damage, and breaches of data privacy regulations, which often impose obligations for due diligence and risk mitigation. Another incorrect approach, such as conducting a risk assessment without considering the potential impact on business operations, is also professionally unacceptable. This demonstrates a lack of understanding of the business context and can result in misallocation of resources, focusing on low-impact risks while neglecting those that could cripple the organization. Finally, an approach that relies solely on vendor-provided risk scores without independent validation fails to meet professional due diligence standards. This can lead to a false sense of security and expose the organization to unaddressed vulnerabilities, potentially violating the duty of care owed to stakeholders. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a cyclical approach to risk management. This begins with asset identification and classification, followed by threat and vulnerability assessment. Crucially, the impact and likelihood of these risks must be evaluated to determine their severity. Based on this severity, appropriate mitigation strategies are developed and implemented. The effectiveness of these strategies is then monitored and reviewed, feeding back into the initial assessment phase. This continuous improvement loop ensures that the risk assessment remains relevant and effective in a constantly evolving IT landscape.